primary care is an innovative, alternative path to insurance-driven healthcare. Typically, a patient pays their doctor a low monthly membership and, in return, builds a lasting relationship with their doctor and has their doctor available at their fingertips. Welcome to the My DPC Story podcast, where each week you will hear the ever so relatable stories shared by physicians who have chosen to practice medicine in their individual communities through the direct primary care model. I'm your host, Maryal Concepcion, family physician, DPC owner, and former fee-for-service doctor. I hope you enjoy today's episode and come away feeling inspired about the future of patient care, direct primary care.
Direct primary care to me is my second chance into medicine. I was ready to leave medicine and give up on the fact that we lack autonomy, that the traditional healthcare space disempowers us. And sometimes we don't have the words to say, but I just knew that I was frustrated. And when I discovered direct primary care, I realized that this is the way that I want to provide medicine. And so I'm very excited and happy that the Lord has given me the opportunity to see this pathway so that I can continue medicine and fulfill the purpose that He has for me. I am Dr. Gabrielle Williams of Gateway Direct Health, and this is my DPC story.
Dr. Gabrielle Williams is a Haitian-American board-certified family medicine physician driven by her high school aspiration to become a physician. She completed her medical training at Emory University and honed her clinical skills at Grady Memorial Hospital. Driven by her passion for helping others, she strives to assist patients in achieving the quality of life they desire. In addition to her medical pursuits, Dr. Williams enjoys being a wife and mother of two, and she has a deep love for exploring new restaurants and indulging in delicious cuisine. With her expertise, dedication, and genuine care for her patients, Dr. Gabrielle Williams makes a positive impact on the lives of those she serves. Thank you so much for tuning in. Find more about DPC, including resources, discounts, my favorite tech tools, books, and more at mydpcstory.com. The mapper has been updated so you can look for practices by specialty. Follow us on your social media platforms at our handle at mydpcstory, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and, of course, the podcast feed so you won't miss when the next episode drops. If you're new to the podcast, check out the blog accompanying this episode, also at mydpcstory.com. And we now have a new listener guide on our homepage, so be sure to check that out. Now, with that, I am so honored to welcome our guest. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Williams.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to meet a personal hero as I've been listening to my DPC story for the last 2 years.
It is absolutely a mutual honor. I am so excited that yourself, myself, everybody who has listened to this podcast can reflect on our experiences as physicians in training, physicians as attendings in the stories we hear on this podcast. So I'm so excited to hear more about your journey. Let's start with your journey into choosing to become a physician. You are the first person in your family to have gone to college, and you blew that one out of the water. You just said, hey, I'm going to go and be a doctor. And you decided this fairly early on in your life. So tell us, please, about what was going on in Dr. Williams, the high school student who said, yeah, I actually could see myself doing medicine.
To be honest, it's not that elaborate of a story. Do you guys remember the show House? That was my inspiration. I was like, I'm going to be a medical detective, right? Figure things out, help people find the right answer, right? I was like, all right, I can do this. But before, I wanted to actually be a therapist because I like talking with people, or an accountant because I'm a beast in math, right? Well, at that time anyway. So I love math. But when I watched the show House, I was like, I want to be like that guy without the cane and some other issues.
He is quite a character. One of the things I loved about House is he had autonomy. And so it definitely harkens back to the continued values that you have as a family medicine physician, even in your opening statement. So let me ask there, because family medicine is a specialty that is taking care of 80 to 90% of the things that an everyday person will experience, when did you decide on family medicine as the specialty that you were going to go after versus something else?
Right. So in med school, well, in Georgia, there's a big push to have primary care doctors. And so there were grants and scholarships for primary care. And I was like, yeah, interesting, maybe for the money, but I was like, nah, let me specialize. So I considered doing OB until I was on my OB rotation. And again, no shame to OB, love the specialty. But a patient said, hey, I have a cough. I think I have pneumonia. Can you help me? That's what she said to her OB. And she said, oh, well, you need to see your primary care doctor for that. And that took me back because I was like, I know I did not spend a whole bunch of time, money, energy, sweat, and tears to say, go see somebody else. So that really, literally was a pivotal point for me to choose family medicine as my specialty. And when doing family medicine rotation, I was like, oh, it's not as mundane as I thought it would be. Like you see something different. It's not just high blood pressure, diabetes. You have your kids and the elderly. You can still do pap smears and gynecologic management and treatment. So I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
That's fantastic. And I think that it's a crapshoot as to what people see and hear. And that's why, again, it's so important for your story and all the physicians who have shared on this podcast, the stories to be out there. And that's amazing that that's also how you perceive that response by the patient, that like, oh, wait a minute, that's not okay, that I'm going to go be the person that I don't even get patients to see me for X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Because culturally, I think our patients think about it. Even this morning, one of my dearest friends who is a professional, a healthcare professional, said, oh, there is this abnormal thyroid lab. I need to see an endocrinologist. And I'm like, actually, most thyroid issues are taken care of by primary care as long as they have the time to do so. So
Right.
you should check into direct primary care in Sacramento. And now I want to ask there, because that experience shifted the direction your journey was going to take. So after you had thought about, hey, maybe OB, maybe specialty care, not family medicine, how did your mind shift? How did your mindset shift when you were like, you know what? That's actually something that I could see myself doing, being a family medicine physician.
Yeah, I think I'm learning, or I learned at that point that I did want to know a lot about a lot of things, right? Like I wanted to have that breadth of knowledge. It might not be depth, which I think that's also the con of family medicine of primary care is not being able to know the depth, but the ability to be there for people and to start the treatment plan or to start the workup. I was like, oh, this is honorable or cool, right? To be able to do that for people.
Absolutely. And when you found family medicine, when you put all of your force towards, I'm going to do this, I want to ask about your training, because when our mindset is shifted and we're like, I'm going to be a family medicine doctor, I feel it impacts the way we go after training, the opportunities we seek, the attendings we talk with. So how did choosing family medicine impact your trajectory in terms of being intentional as you train to be an attending physician?
Oh, great question. So I think because I knew that we would know a lot about a lot of things, but not enough, I made sure to do different rotations in different specialties and absorb as much as I can, right? As far as learning again what the first workup is, what's the first treatment, so that I would be able to handle those things in house. So making sure to go to different specialties and actually enjoy them, right? Find things that I like about urology, find things I like about endo, and uh, and be intentional in making sure I understood like a good solid foundation so that I can bring that into primary care.
Especially with specialists. Like I think you can learn this from family medicine doctors also, but I loved, and I'm sure you had this experience too, when specialty medicine doctors would say certain things because of their experience in suturing this type of tissue or the location of the tissue or taking care of somebody with this particular medical history. There's the book learned things, and then there's the things that you pick up from your fellow physicians who have been there, done that for years. So I think
Right.
it's a smart thing to do, especially now that you're a DPC doctor, to have, gone and spent time. Yes, like residencies will put you in certain rotations, but
Right.
when you have that extracurricular time to shape what your training is, I think it's very important to think about, what do you want to do 3, 5 years from now? And if you want to do that, how do you get training so that you're competent to do that? Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right.
So tell me now, along your journey, we we have a system in medical school and residency that is based on the insurance fee-for-service system. So at what point did you realize, like, hey, there's something wrong with this system? Why are we having some third-party payer determine what we can have available for the patient when I'm the one who went to medical school? When did you start feeling that there was an incongruence between what you were doing and what you wanted to do?
Ooh, great question. So I think of three scenarios. So in med school, in residency, the first year we had 1 hour per patient, right? And I was like, after 1 hour of speaking with the patient, I was like, that's not enough time. I still need more time. Sure, that's you can attribute that to inefficiency, right? I didn't know how to take a history, but it also now looking back, right? Like now looking back, I'm like, that was also a clue. Hey, we need time in order to delve into the issues that people have. So that's one. Two, when we talk about billing and what we bill the insurance company versus self-pay, I was like, wait, why is this super inflated? Well, I don't like, well, what are we doing? Why are we increasing the price so much? And you hear, oh, it's so that we can get enough, right? Like you're still going to get less than what you charge, but so that you can get some versus the self-pay price. I was like, oh, that still doesn't make sense, but whatever. This is just how it is. And then the third thing is while as an attending, I was anxious, I was nervous, I was always running. I dreaded going to work. I dreaded waking up in the morning, and I did not like the mother I became. I was very irritable, and I was like, man, the kid's always asking for something. And the Lord had to pause me. He's like, yeah, that's your job. But you're with 20, 25 people a day asking more of you, not trusting the advice that you're giving them. And you have your medical director or whoever, admin telling you that you're not doing enough, even though you're doing the most that you can to take care of people. And I'm realizing the word is I felt really disempowered and devalued. Like, patients didn't respect what we did. They were mad. I was the face of the clinic, even though I didn't run it and had no couldn't do anything with the rules, even though we try, right? We have huddle and all kinds of provider meetings, and we all leave knowing that it's going to be the same as when we first came in. And from admin, just asking us to, or not asking, but overbooking us, double booking us, cutting down our lunch, thinking that from 12 to 1 is enough time, but surely if that 12 o'clock patient is not on time, we get a 20-minute grace period, they come at 12:19. That's it for my lunch, right? And things just didn't make sense. Another big thing is that the system where they want us to see 20, 25 patients a day doesn't work seeing that many people. But it is on the doctor's shoulders and our responsibility to make it make sense and to make it work. And so yeah, so I got tired. I was like, I'm gonna work, and people think I'm joking, but I'm gonna work at the least person facing job. So I was gonna work at Kroger stocking shelves or work at McDonald's flipping burgers. And I was like, I don't want to interact with people because people hurt, right? Like people can hurt you intentionally, unintentionally.
And I don't know if you agree with this, but I think that even more so in family practice where you are in a environment where you're pressed for time, one issue per visit, the need for someone to listen when it's not given to a person, I feel that it manifests in the entitlement that we see, the anger, the sheer violence that we have seen in primary care offices in particular, especially since the pandemic started. When you have a culture where even though healthcare should be a human right, it is not delivered equally amongst our community. Systemically, this is wrong because the system is built the way that the system is supposed to be set up to benefit the people it is benefiting, who are, at the end of the day, not us or our patients.
So I'm like, don't be patient centric in word, be patient centric in deed. And if the concerns that people have are, we don't have enough time, we can't get in, address that, not by overbooking the physicians. That's not the way to do it, but preserving and recognizing the holiness of the patient-doctor relationship. I'm realizing in DPC that that is the foundation of health. There are articles that say if you have a primary care doctor, you're living longer, you're healthier, and And I think people are like, oh, well, doctors aren't everything and blah, blah, blah. Well, when you have someone you trust, you're going to tell them that something is wrong. You won't you won't suffer in silence, and you're more likely to go and get help sooner than later. I always talk about this patient who I met later, who is an entrepreneur, truck driver. Business is not doing well, but he's doing everything that he can. And then he gets belly pain, but says, I'll wait. And you say, I'm going to get insurance in, what did he say, 30 days? And so he's, I'll just wait. 14 days before his insurance kicked in, he had really severe belly pain, landed in the ICU, had an incarcerated hernia, needed emergency surgery for a resection, was in the ICU for a week and in the hospital. And here's the problem, right? Not all of that, yes. I mean, including all of that, right? Not being able to access care, waiting until it's too late, and now have a medical emergency. So now he's lost the business. Now he's dealing with depression and is dealing with it with alcoholism, and now his liver is affected. I am trying to get people before that. That's why I say having a great patient-doctor relationship is a foundation for healing, because at least you'll seek help and you have someone you can go to and you know someone who'll be able to help you.
Absolutely. I want to take a step back also in that when people are learning about direct primary care and eventually choosing this model, before that, something that you said really stuck out, and it's the physician's fault that we are not able to see enough patients, or that we are not able to deliver the care that we went to medical school ideally to provide. So what do you think, like, when we think about that idea that it's our fault, you look at other entrepreneurs out there, including possibly this patient who was also driving truck and being an entrepreneur himself, but it's like the way that we go about perceiving the system and the way that we go about interpreting what is the reason the system is messed up is that we internalize it. What do you think about, like, when I'm trying to think of my question here, like, how do you reflect back on your time in fee for service and think about how you were also in this bucket of, oh, I thought it was my fault at some point during that journey.
Dr. Concepcion, Maryal. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, internalizing the blame for the broken system. I didn't realize, I mean, I knew patients did it to us and said, oh, all doctors care about is money, right? And I'm like, that's far from the truth. How dare you? But then when you look at from the patient's perspective, right, the person who they schedule an appointment with who is supposed to take care of them and to provide education, empower them, has made them wait a long time, appointments with them, can't reach them after. It makes sense then now why that I was a face, but I just like I was like fighting it when someone said it to me, if a patient said it to me, but internally I was like, wait, what else am I missing here? What else am I doing wrong? How else can I better help the patient experience? How else can I get the labs done quicker? You know, push out the labs and med refills and orders and see the patients, but I still have all that other stuff to do and I gotta go home. And so like I'm pretty sure the admins were like, man, these doctors just don't want to work, right? We were hoping for more telemedicine. We were tired. We were literally tired mentally and physically and emotionally drained and had nothing left to give. I don't even know if I answered your question, but yeah, if someone were to come up to me and say, doctors are this, I'd be ready to fight. But if I took a step back and look at their perspective, I'm like, oh, shoot. And then when I look at a system that I couldn't move, right, I couldn't choose the staff that I worked with. I could not train them better or fire them or whatever. So I had to figure out how to see patients and provide that care for them in that broken system. That was my responsibility, right?
And I think it plays on our choice to become physicians and to have a career where we're taking care of other people. I think it plays on our big, by default, being hard workers. Like, we have to be hard workers to get into medical school. If you're a doctor, you are friggin' pretty capable and you're pretty determined to be a person in society that's contributing, giving back. And so it definitely plays on the we know that they're soft-hearted. They want to help out. So we're gonna do this, and then it's like throwing a person in the ocean and seeing how they swim. It's, oh, well, we only know one way to do things, and that's to try to make our situations better so that we can thrive and be and cope. And so I definitely would say, if you are learning about DPC, exploring DPC, and new to this ecosystem of the direct primary care movement, I definitely encourage you. If you're finding yourself like, how can I become part of a committee? How can I use a dot phrase better and make it more efficient? If you're asking those questions, think about, is that what you're actually asking, or are you asking about, why am I feeling like this is my responsibility to fix my own clinic situation?
That's real.
So going back to this patient that you had, that so saddeningly I'm like making up words here, that is, so going back to this patient that you're talking about, this person driving truck, this person who had something that most likely could have been felt on exam or picked up on even history, followed up by exam, before it got to the point of incarceration. I want to ask you now about your complete 180 change into choosing a different way to practice, because now you are the doctor who can say, that's cool. Like, you're in Iowa because that's where your route is taking you today. Fantastic. When you're on a break, can you call me and we'll talk about what's going on with your belly? You're that type of doctor now. So how did you learn about direct primary care?
So my husband, well, let's go back. So we learned in residency, I think someone came and talked about concierge medicine. I was like, that's for rich people. No thanks. I'm gonna go work in an underserved community and help everybody. So I was like, all right, whatever. Then I got burnt out and had moral injury, compassion fatigue, all the things. And my husband was like, all right, well, you're complaining about the system. So what would you do differently? So I can vividly remember writing down in my notebook, I would be there for my patients. They would know me. I would know them. I would be available to help them, and I would be on retainer. And then I was like, okay, this feels good. How does this work? I don't know. And I started looking it up, and then I came across direct primary care and concierge medicine. And concierge wasn't as I thought it was, and direct primary care just seemed like a better fit. So I researched, listened to your videos for your podcast for sure. My husband recognizes your voice. He says even now you need to listen to my DPC story every day to stay encouraged. And I sought out the DPCs in the Atlanta area, and I like contacted them and talked with them. So I talked to Dr. Mehta, Dr. Springston. I went up to Dalton and talked to Dr. Little and I forget how to say her name, but Kayla.
Dr. Juba?
And
Dr. Juba?
yes, yes. And I met with, dang it, it's not Dr. Barnes as well. There's another doc in Cartersville. And so I traveled. I was like, I need to figure out if is this what I need? I mean, to be honest, I was like, is this going to save me and save my career, save whatever I thought needed saving? And everyone was like, this is the better way to provide care. Everyone seemed genuinely happy. They were honest about running a business. Even Dr. Barnes said, DPC is not going to save you, right? Like, it's still a business, still things that you have to work out, but it's still a better way to provide care. So since then, I was like, that's what I'm doing. I can't do nothing else.
And just another reminder here, check out mydpcstory.com, because the mapper has been updated. So zoom in on your locale, find doctors, and the mapper is actually a mapper of guests and their accompanying episodes. So if you find Dr. Little and Dr. Juba and you click on their point on the map, you can also listen to their story as well as find their address. So it's definitely an interactive map in that sense for those people who are like, I don't actually know who's around me. So let me ask you there, because hearing Dr. Barnes say, which I agree with, it's not gonna be the utopia that you walk into and then magically it's done for you. Yes, you can join on as an employee at another DPC. That is very possible these days. But in the sense of choosing to change the way that you were practicing medicine and to not only reframe your mindset, but also manifest a whole practice. Now you have Gateway Direct Health to serve your community and to be there. I want to ask about fears going into taking that next step to truly open your direct primary care and things that impacted your decision, because you're a mom of two and your little ones are little like mine. They're not like 16 driving themselves to high school and
Right.
cooking for themselves. You actually have to be there on the day-to-day more. So what were the things that impacted your decision that you thought about as you made this transition to DPC?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, I think the big thing is there was no alternative for me. I wasn't gonna stay. I couldn't stay for the sake of my soul. And that might seem extreme, but I could not stay for the sake of my soul and my spirit. It was too crushed. And and then also I since because they told me about entrepreneurship and how hard it's gonna take, I hired a coach, right? And hoping that I would understand the business aspect and the marketing because I'm more of an introvert. I have social anxiety. I have fear of rejection, the whole thing, a whole list of things that would stop anyone from going into business. But yeah, I hired a coach and it was helpful, but he didn't get DPC. And so then we had to part ways because I that wasn't as supportive as it could be. And I definitely highly relied on my husband. I thank him so much for his support. Because I can only imagine how hard it is if you don't have the support of your spouse to do this. And we were like, all right, we have all this savings. I mean, money is meant to be spent, right? One way or another, now or later. And I'm like, but you sure? But again, to me there was no other option. So we had our savings, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it well. And going at it like we did with med school and residency, people say, hey, you didn't stop after first year, you didn't stop after second year of residency or med school. But but I'm still struggling with business, right? Because there's no right answer, right? There's I'm hoping for a multiple choice, pick C and I get an A. That's not what business is. So I've realized how much personal and spiritual growth is necessary, or that you're just going to have to go through it in order to go from employed to entrepreneur. Because the Gabby that brought me to as an attending at an outpatient center is not going to be the same Gabby that's going to get me to be the entrepreneur, CEO, founder, owner of a medical practice. So there's a big learning curve. I'm so grateful that I was able to go to different DPCs, get some people to help mentor, at least just to talk to about stuff. And yeah, here we are.
Incredible. Let me ask you there, between the time where you said, yep, not doing that anymore, meaning fee for service, and when you were like, I'm going to open up my own DPC, what was the timeline between nope and I'm doing this, I'm getting my papers together, everything, my mind shift is changing?
Yep. The went from nope to yup was a few weeks. But I did the National Health Service course, so I had a service obligation to fulfill. But during that time, I was visiting DPCs and 1000% was planning my exit because I had to. And I'm grateful that I had that enough time to plan an exit. And I went from being employed one day to being entrepreneur the next day, the following week. So I went straight into it, which that has its issues because now I'm in therapy and talking with my therapist. She was like, you didn't heal from the trauma, from the issues that you had there. And so you're thinking that you're running to a different practice, but you're actually running away from what you experienced, which are two different things. And I was like, oh, really? So now I'm working through, okay, I need to forgive medicine. I need to forgive the training. I need to forgive the system and forgive what it did to me, and also have grace for myself, but also heal to becoming the doctor that I really do want to be, which is I want to be the hospitable doctor who's ready to help you when something happens, who's not going to resent that and say, oh man, DPC is just more of that. No, I want to be able to of course, with boundaries, but and not trying to people please, but be able to provide that care where people will say, man, this is what I've been looking for. Like, that's what I want to do.
And I think that you've added a part that people don't necessarily think about when they're choosing to do DPC is you have time to be you. Yes, there's the doctor hat, the mom hat, but there's also the I am Dr. Gabrielle Williams, period. That's where one part of my sentence ends. And I need to be able to be whole in order to take care of my kids, my husband, dinner, my patients, all of these things. And so
Yeah.
I think that DPC, that unspoken thing about DPC, in that you have the time to do whatever you need to do because you get to determine what that spigot looks like. You get to open with 278 patients like Dr. Kissy Blackwell, who shared that on the podcast. You get to open with patients who are limited by number of spots that you have as you open your clinic, and you only have so many meet and greet appointments per month. You get to determine that because you have full autonomy of your practice. And so I think it's wonderful that you are taking the time to heal, because it's going to make a stronger self for you going forward, which is what you deserve for sure. So let me ask there, because you did have this time where you just went from one to the other. It's just like going from renal to neuro. It's, you don't even have time to refresh from your final. You're like, and tomorrow we start a new system. Can you share some top takeaways from your transition, such that if you look back and you're talking to other people who are like, I also am expecting a pretty quick transition, what are some high level tips that you can give for a person who is going to be making the transition to DPC so that they can plan a little bit more for their journey ahead?
Oh, great question. So I define success as getting as many people as quickly as possible. So when I was not meeting that goal of success, I would felt down and discouraged, and I was like, man, this is a disappointment. Let me quit very early, or every week, every month, I was wanting to quit. But I think leveling expectations is a big thing. And two, take the time to set up your practice now. Think about your vision, think about your mission, make sure that the decisions that you make align and go back to those things, because you have the time, right? If you're building up slowly, you have the time to get your systems and process in place and have a SOP for your future employees. And always think about, okay, will my practice look like with 300 people? And that's how you start so that you can finish that way. Because what I did was, oh, I'm giving everyone the time, 2 hours for you and 3 hours for you. And that wasn't sustainable. Or we'll have an appointment at 8 p.m., which is fine for some people if that's what you can sustain. But I knew I could not. Well, I'm later realizing that I could not sustain that. And so I'm like, man, I should have taken that time while I was like sulking about not meeting my goal. I should have taken that time to say, this is what I want. These are the decisions that I need to make to make sure that they align with what I want and what I want the practice to look like. And take that time for rest, take the time to heal mentally, physically, emotionally, and be ready to delegate and hire quicker than I make sure to hire for the tasks that I need done instead of trying to do everything myself. Because it's possible you can. There are definitely micro practices. But if you're like, all right, really don't want to do phlebotomy, then don't do phlebotomy. Just be ready to hire someone to do it or send them to Quest and just be okay with it. Make sure to get the help that you need and you don't have to do everything yourself. Those would be my top advice from what I've learned over next month will be a year. So that's what I've learned.
I know, I'm so excited. September is when Big Trees MD opened too. So I'm like, I was thinking about your anniversary and I'm like, it's amazing. It's going to be a year, which is awesome. And I think that it definitely flies by, especially when you're doing all the things and you're living all the moments. But one of my dear friends and mentors, Angela Mondor, she has a podcast all about neurodiversity and business success. She says, better done than perfect. And I'm like, I use that mantra a lot, in that, oops, that was not the QR code that I was supposed to send out. Guessing I'm gonna have to send a second email with the correction, and it will be okay. But
You're right.
the things that we do and we have to pivot on, it just goes back to the model where you have the ability to pivot, because you don't have to run it through 16 committees to be able to make one change in terms of like, I actually want this Band-Aid in my clinic and not that one. It's so empowering to hear the growth that you've experienced even just within this first year. So tell us now about your brand, because you got to see all of these other DPC clinics. You got to talk with the DPC doctors themselves, but you were creating a clinic that was your baby, that was your way of becoming a DPC physician and manifesting a DPC in your community. So how did you get to Gateway Direct Health, the brand, and where you were going to open your clinic?
Great. So I remember for medical school, yeah, the essay to get into medical school, I said doctors or primary care, whatever I said, was a gatekeeper into healthcare, something like that. And I was like, well, gatekeep was not the word that I would want to use now, because now there's like a negative connotation, like you hold back if you're a gatekeeper, right? You hold back vital information. And I was like, no, we're more like gateway. This is the path, right? This is the through this practice, this is the journey that you're going to take to better health, right? You have to go through this practice to get to a better health state, to quality of life and quality healthcare. And then Gateway GW and my initials, I was like, perfection. Go ahead, Jesus. Make it work. So I went with Gateway Direct, and then Direct, of course, and wanting to make sure people know it's clear that this is direct primary care practice, concierge practice. I call it concierge and direct primary care because concierge is the common thing that people understand. But of course, we're more similar than we are different, right? So it's a direct service membership practice. I just looked for the colors. I just looked online. Oh, I like those colors. But I'm not really a colors and all kinds of stuff person, but I like the colors. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was inviting and people knew that this was a place they can get good medical information, I should say. So I started the social media, the Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, so that I can talk about the topics and people would see I am about education, right? All about education empowering. In a 5-minute visit, all I can prescribe you is I can just only prescribe you a pill. There is no time to tell you how you don't need an anti-reflux medicine for acid reflux. You make some changes, right? And then we reassess, make some lifestyle changes and reassess. And oh, shoot, I should avoid spicy foods. I'm like, who would have thunk it? But there's no time to really talk about that in 5 minutes. But with Gateway Direct Health, within social media, I want people to know, hey, these are things that you can do. Of course, not medical advice, just medical information that these are things you can do. These are ways that you can take care of yourself. So yeah, so that's like the brand is where we're really big on education to empower, accessible care, timeliness, because I don't like wasting time. I don't like wasting people's time. I think it's wild that people really would have to take the whole day off just to go to the doctor.
And you can relate, especially with two little ones. It's okay. Now I'm dealing with a tantrum before the child will get in the car. And then I got to deal with the other one who actually has the doctor's appointment. Like that struggle is real. And so when you're no longer having to do that, like we have a DPC pediatrician for our kids, and it provided me with so much relief that I no longer have to do that journey of, oh my God, I'm so sorry we're late. It was not my fault, I swear to God. So it's so refreshing again to know that you are doing this for your community. And like just a couple things. One, go to gatewaydirecthealth.com. It's beautiful. The website you've built is amazing, but also just your headshots, your brand colors, it goes so well together, and it's so vibrant. And it threw me for a loop when you were saying you were an introvert, because I'm like, girl, not online. Like, you have it going on. And I love that with your passion for being an educator and an advocate for a person's health. Like, I love on some of the content that you have there, like you've been on other people's podcasts in your community talking about colon cancer, or you're talking to people about being a mom and a doctor to non-medical audiences. So I think it's wonderful what you continue to do. But yes, that also threw me for a loop. I'm like, introvert, huh? Okay. Would not have guessed that.
That's hilarious. Listen, I was off social media. Well, this is a hard one. So I was off social media. Like I cut everything off in 2020. It was really bad. There, the unarmed black men and black people. And I was like, I can't take it. COVID was, I was like, I cannot take it. So I went off social media. And so when people were like, well, if you start a business, you gotta have a presence. I was like, but no, I can't go back. So was I running from something or running towards something? So I was running from dealing with all the issues of social media. So again, having to heal so that I can go back, run to Gateway Direct Help and community education so that I can do that through social media. Okay, that might be my thing. You're running from something, right? You might be running from something instead of running to something. All right, check yourself. Just kidding.
Like, now, because I mentioned your website and because it's amazing, one of the things I totally want to call out is the fact that you use video. The vibrancy is in your smile, is in the way that you talk with people. And that's just playing. I was at a Calaveras Chamber of Commerce event locally, and the presenter was talking about that, how this person had used drone footage from, I don't know, like you can actually get some drone footage from Google Earth, but like you've taken it to the next level, and you have this video that is just playing on repeat of like you. I think it's so perfect for our culture right now because we have the memories and attention spans of fish sometimes when we're doom scrolling. And it's, if all you see is Dr. Williams' smile, to me that's different than we provide the best care on a billboard driving in town, and you're like, but you're also the ER that I waited 19 hours for to get seen for my rash that I had on my leg. That's not an emergency, but that's all I had access to. So tell us about your decision to have your website be as it is today.
Oh yeah. So I did not design my website. IOTA Digital in Atlanta did, and they actually picked my colors and they put the ideas in. Of course, I contributed. And I always, for some reason, when I first started, I was like, man, I really want a video. I feel like that's more interactive, but didn't have the content until the same people, IOTA, not only designed my website, but did videography. And he captured like when I was at an expo and just going around, I had a booth and stuff. And I was like, and he was like, hey, you can put this on your website. I was like, really? And I don't know, I love it. I was like, it's interactive, right? Maybe I need a one of like actual clinic and seeing a patient, but that's what I got for now.
I think it hits home in that it establishes you are different than the regular fee for service clinic. Like the culture is just, it's apparent from the second you click on the website. And props to IOTA because it doesn't take a ton of time to load. So please share that feedback with them. When you were coming to this point of working with somebody, working with another expert in the field of videography and website creation, do you have any tips on how to interview and then how to get your vision across to somebody else?
Listen, that is so vital to make sure the people that you hire or who are on your team understand the mission, understand the vision. And if they don't, it's okay to move on to the next person. So I knew him since he was young. So he owed me a favor. So anyway, we spent time and I talked about the practice. And when I see that he got it and he understood the value, I was like, all right, you're like the person to do this. So I would say that for those who do your photography, videography, like talk to them about what you're doing, take the time to explain it. I know we have to do a lot of education compared to if we were insurance based, but take the time to explain to people because when you do, they like you pique their interest and they're like, oh, well, maybe that's true. I am suffering a lot for no reason. There's a different way. Same thing for coach, making sure your coach understands your vision and mission and doesn't try to change it because they don't get it or feel like it'll be successful because we have plenty of examples. Maryal has shown us plenty of examples of people who are thriving in DPC. So if someone doesn't believe it, kick them to the curb because we have plenty of example, the evidence for DPC working, for concierge medicine working is so much greater than not.
Amen. Like totally 100% will die on that hill agreeing with you. So let me ask you there, because you had somebody that you were partnering with to help bring your vision to digital life. You had your vision in terms of how you wanted to deliver care. How did you start getting the word out in terms of telling people in your community, this is what you're doing? And what were those first, what you touched on it a little bit in terms of the expectation that you initially had of got to have that 278 patients in day one. But when you started reaching out to people, what can you reflect on that time in terms of like, how did it go? Did you have those days where you're like, well, that was an interesting meet and greet? Because I sure have had those days where it's like, next time I'm going to say this one instead of that one.
Oh yeah, when you start anything new, you're excited, and you're like, everyone should get it. And I had to realize, no, not everyone gets it. Even when you explain it 5 different times, even when your website clearly says membership. Do you take my insurance? Okay. All right. Let's figure out where the disconnect was. So with that, reality in business, you're on fire does not mean everyone else is going to be on fire. And it is easy that because they're not on fire, it can dim your light. It could dim your passion. And that's why my husband was like, you need to listen to my DPC story. You need to listen to Entre MD. You need to listen to things that'll continue to encourage you because this world, it's very easy to lose passion, especially when you're the owner, you're doing all the little tasks, and you're the financial person, accounting, benefits manager, office manager, and all phlebotomist, all the things. Yeah, so I'm excited. And then when I see that people weren't getting it, that discouraged me. We put out an ad, and it was a still photo, did it for 3 months. And the calls that I would get, do you take my insurance? Do you take my Medicaid? And I was like, what is going on? And then when you explain it, they'd hang up on me. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe doesn't work. But it does take time. And I think that's where we need to give ourselves grace. It does take time, and it takes time for people to understand something new. We're asking them to put money that in something that they've never seen before, right? They don't have a great example. Some people weren't referred by someone else. They just found you randomly on social media. And so it's very important to be patient, and it's okay to be rejected. If for anyone else who has a problem with rejection or feels like you do everything you can to make things perfect and you still get rejected, it's okay. And that is a indication that they are not your ideal client. That's what I had to learn. That if they say no, you got to thank the Lord. Say, all right, they weren't for me. I'm going to find the people who are for me, who do value this. And then a lot of what I hear from coaches and from people say, hey, like, take inventory of the patients that you do have. What are they like? What do they like? Why did they join? I thought for sure people without insurance would run to Gateway Direct Help. They are not. It's the people with insurance who are winning. And I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at them sideways, like, girl, why are you joining? You got insurance, right? But they're like, I need a doctor I could like. That's like the big things. I need a doctor I can trust, who will not minimize me or rush me, who will spend time with me and treat me well. And I'm like, that for that you paid an extra fee? Yes. Like I thought it was, oh, unlimited appointments and blah blah blah. No, it was the more intangible of having a doctor that they trusted. And like I said, that was the main one of my missions, is to help the entrepreneur in my mind, the entrepreneur that I met, to help him find a safe space, to find a doctor he can talk to before things get worse. So I'm still working through that. I still get angry. I know in the first 6, 7 months, I wanted to quit every week. And I will proudly say that I wanted to quit every week. And now I've made a promise to myself, I'm not quitting. Like the same way I didn't quit med school, the same way I didn't quit residency, I can't quit. So now, has that translated to a whole bunch of patients now that I'm positive? Not yet. But one day I'm definitely hopeful, more hopeful. So then that's going to come across when I do talk to people about Gateway. I'm hopeful. I'm thinking about my mission. I'm thinking about that entrepreneur. I'm like, I am here to help you guys, right? I don't like selling. I think you think of the sleazy car salesman, but when someone said, you have to remember your why. Like, why are you doing this? And if you remember your why, if you believe in it 100% that this is going to help someone, then yes, you do need to scream it at the rooftops and let everybody know, because that you're giving a great service that people need, right? Like we talk about pain points and are you solving a problem in the marketplace? Hell yes, we are. We definitely are. And it's okay if some can't do it right now. there are times you hear in the story, in my DPC story, they like, man, someone I talked to a year, 2 years ago came and found me later. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that might be the goal. When you think of quality healthcare, you are going to think about Gateway Direct Health. You're going to think about Dr. Gabrielle Williams, whether you choose to join now or not. But one thing I need people to know is where they can find genuine quality healthcare that they can trust.
And that they deserve. It's like you had a patient who you did an Instagram live with who ended her interview with, life is short, but if you don't take care of yourself, it gets shorter. And I think that it really speaks to, not only is DPC great as a model for us to be able to practice in, but it's also it's so cool that the model just reinforces itself when patients are able to access their doctor. They're able to access Dr. Williams' care when they actually need it. And then they understand that the repercussions of this model, you can't always put a price to what we are doing. And when you have patients who are buying into the practice financially, but also emotionally, mentally, all of the things, they're trusting you to be their doctor, and they have such a great experience, it literally creates your marketing platform without you even trying, because that's how that person is going to be talking to her people at the salon or the or church or wherever she is going. And so I think it's also so nice to think about that those are the people. Like, I love, oh my God, I love my patients. When I did a cardiology consult virtually with a direct care cardiologist, Dr. Nicole Harkin, who's been on the podcast before, with my patient. And just like we're all cracking up. Like my patient is just saying these things, and I'm like, this is why I love my patients, because they are real, they are honest, and they know that if I'm going to refer someone directly to somebody and recommend a name, that
Right.
they're just another extension of Big Trees MD, and that they can continue to just, they can continue to feel like this doctor, I expect that they're going to listen just like my primary care doctor does, because they practice in the same model. So the practice, it gives back, and the model gives back in so many ways.
Yes.
And it definitely contributes to healthier patients. So it's amazing.
Yep.
So
And who knew there'd be a win-win, right? For physicians to be valued and empowered, and for patients to feel valued and empowered. DPC is a win-win.
And I think that that's awesome that you are taking a survey on what you're getting back from your patients, because that also helps you and all of us continue personalizing the way that we're delivering the care.
Yes.
So let me ask you about now when a person joins on, you have a 3-month commitment minimum for a person joining on. Some people do, some people don't, some people have a registration fee, some people don't, all different ways to do it. Can you tell us about the decision to have a 3-month commitment, and how has that helped at Gateway's Direct Health?
Yes. DPC works well when there's relationship. We are not urgent cares. I mean, I guess maybe some people might use this as urgent care. Hey, I got a quick problem. Let me get in to see someone quick because we have the availability. But DPC is based on relationship. And so the 3-month commitment reinforces that, so that people are clear that, again, I'm not an urgent care. I'm not trying to be just a doctor that you see once every few years. I am trying to establish a relationship that you'll be able to cash in on, right, throughout the year. But also, let's say you were to get sick, you have somebody, you already invested the time and energy in a physician, so that if you get sick, you have somebody who's there for you. I just want people to know that this is a long-term relationship. It's not short-term. So that's why we have the 3-month commitment.
Love it. And tell me now about your practice in terms of churn, because even within the first year, like for me, the number one reason for churn was people just left rural America and they're like, dude, I need a Target. I need a hospital that's not 45 minutes away. So for you, have you experienced churn? And if so, what is your number one reason for churn at your practice?
Oh yeah. So yes, I have definitely experienced churn, and it hurts like anyone else, because you're like, man, I thought we was good. But the big reason for churn was people could not sustain paying for the membership fee. So then I'm like, oh, I guess they don't see the value or truly have financial issues. But we always like give them space, like, hey, you missed your payment. What can we do, or what's going on? But sometimes people maybe are embarrassed to or prideful and don't want to share that, hey, it's financial constraints. But that's what I've heard the most is for finances. So I'm like, all right, well, thank you. We don't try to leave on bad terms, but I don't want to have to chase people for money, because then I'm like, then it is a business. Yes, it is a business, but I don't know. It just seems different if I have to chase people for money. So we welcome them to come back. We do have a re-enrollment fee because we do want to decrease how many people are coming in and out. We want to establish a long-term relationship with our people.
Just a note here, if there's a difference in audio quality, if it's a little bit more echoey, reminder to everyone, I live in rural America and I lost power 75% through Dr. Williams' interview. So now I'm in a different location and we'll continue the conversation. So it's been incredible hearing more details about your story. By default, I think it's inspiring because it's so relatable, like we talked about in the very beginning. Like your husband have found these stories so helpful in keeping motivated, keeping inspired, but also keeping it real. Like that's the big thing is like, you have 2 kids, I have 2 kids. We talked about that. You are a real doctor, a family medicine doctor who can do all of these things because you have the time to do so. So for those people who are us before we did DPC, who are learning about DPC and thinking, could this be a model for me? What would you say to those people?
Yes, yes, and yes. I feel like maybe entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? Starting a business is not for everyone, but being employed is the other side, like it's something else that you can do. I believe that what we're looking for, autonomy, prioritization of physician, as well as a patient care that we say that we want to give to patients, granted that we're given the time to do it, and being able to educate and empower and find people who value your opinion and will listen to you because you've built that trust. You have a great rapport with your patients. Like, this is why we went into medicine. So therefore, DPC is that vehicle to provide care the way that most doctors imagine. There is room in DPC to do what you want to do, for sure. So I would encourage anyone who is tired of the system. If you're happy with it, I mean, that's great. And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those who are unhappy and who want to make a change and want to stay in medicine, right? If you want to stay in medicine, definitely do DPC. Look into it.
Now, something that's more closer to home timeline wise, you are in your first year, about to celebrate your 1-year anniversary, which as a small business owner is a huge achievement. It is, something that you celebrate every little win in DPC, but making these milestones of your 1-year mark, it's incredible. So for those people who are also in their first year of DPC, what are some takeaways that you have for them in terms of things that you say to yourself or things that you try to remember or learn more about to stay inspired, to stay motivated, like you talked about earlier?
Yes. First thing that comes to mind is the you that brought you to this place is not the you that's going to take you into DPC. It's not the you that's going to sustain your practice. Being employed is one thing, being an entrepreneur is another. What I've realized is entrepreneurship, at least in the first year, maybe in the next years, is all about financial growth. But in the first year, I found it to be about personal and spiritual growth. I mean, it will reveal yourself like you've never seen before, which took me by surprise. No, ain't nobody tell me that. So I'll be the first one to tell you that it is about personal growth. It's about skill development. It's not about multiple choice answers and there's only one answer, right? Like, there is many multiple choice answers and they all could be right, right? It's just find the one that's right for you, that you desire. So with that in mind, give grace to yourself, right? If you get frustrated and like, man, I sacrificed all this time in medicine. I sacrificed my 20s, my 30s. I sacrificed time with my family. Why do I have to keep sacrificing? Why do I have to keep evolving and learning? Because that's just what it is. And I have to and there's a lot of peace in knowing that, so that you can walk differently and pace yourself differently. For those who were in a practice before, had non-compete, you welcome to grow fast. But for us who had non-competes or we're in an area where DPC probably is not affordable to people, you do have to start over, still have to make a name for yourself, but it's okay. And keep growing, keep evolving. Just know that it's just part of the journey. And I'm talking to whoever's like me who was frustrated with that. It's like, why do I have to do this? Like I'm above this. I've done the work. I'm a whole MD. Nah, this entrepreneurship will humble you. And please delegate as much as you can if you're interested in not just being a micro practice, but even if you're a micro practice, make sure you delegate your bookkeeping and, HR or standard operating procedures. Like delegate as much as you can so then you can make sure that your practice is about you doing more of the clinical work, more of the work you love, and not all the other things. Of course, learn them, but, of course, delegate eventually.
It's so powerful. And I think that, and the one thing I want to say in reaction to that is I hope you and your husband clip this part and literally just have it like, okay, this is the emergency button. I need to hear something really awesome. And you can hear from yourself, because I think that it's so funny sometimes when we are in the thick of things and we forget, oh yeah, that's right. I have been here before. And the things that would help me usually come from ourselves doing our own, like our self-therapy. So I think it's awesome that you have this going forward and that you can reflect on at year 3, at year 5, at year 10. And you're like, my practice has changed and grown in so many ways, but it's so cool to hear where I was at year 1. So with that, I am so excited that we are going to continue the conversation over on our Patreon community podcast. I'm going to be talking with Dr. Williams about her patients and the way she interacts with her patients and community via social media. So she has taken patient testimonials to the next level. Be sure to join us for this conversation on the My DPC Story Patreon community, and you can find the Patreon link on our homepage at mydpcstory.com. So thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you, as always.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of My DPC Story, highlighting the physician experience in the world of direct primary care. I hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. If you want to dive deeper into the direct primary care movement, consider joining our My DPC Story Patreon community. Here, you'll have access to exclusive content, including more interview topics and much more. Don't forget to subscribe to My DPC Story on your podcast feed and follow us on social media as well. If you're able, I'd greatly appreciate if you could leave us a review. It helps others to find the podcast. Until next time, stay informed, stay healthy, and keep advocating for DPC. Read more about DPC news on the daily at dpcnews.com. Until next week, this is Maryal Concepcion.